And I had a question about sisu again, because it's often something that Finnish people present to foreigners when they arrived in Finland. But when are you confronted to this concept as a child?
I believe I have had a lecture about sisu in kindergarten.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It's a sunny day today, and I don't mind to stay with you under the sun. Oh, under the sun.
Hello everyone and welcome to the last episode of the summer edition of Radio Turku, episode 8, International Environment for Finnish People. And today you are here with your hosts Noemi and
I am Simo. I almost forgot my name for a second. And yeah.
I was expecting you to add
Oh
something.
yeah, today we are going to talk about travel, about other cultures, and about why it always feels good after a long adventure to come back to Turku.
This is right, because both these men had some adventures abroad or with people living in an international environment, but still they are here today in this beautiful city of Turku, in this fabulous city of Turku. What am I saying? How dare I? And today we have with us Lauri
Hi everyone, nice to be here again.
and Pyry.
Hello, everyone.
Small
You said
anecdotes.
again?
Yeah. Why is Lauri saying again? We have to explain this really quickly. Last week we recorded an entire episode with Lauri. Sadly, it's my fault. I badly plugged in the mic, and then the sound quality is not as good as what I would have liked it to be, and we will post this episode as a bonus episode. It will be about coming back to Turku and his adventures, because Lauri lived in a lot of countries, including Hong Kong and Japan and France, and so you will listen to this as a bonus episode. But for now, we have two guests today. Can you introduce yourself, Pyry?
Hello, I'm Pyry. I have lived in Turku for like 10 years. I've studied cultural history in the University of Turku. And I'm here because Simo thought that I have traveled a lot.
But you have.
Okay, maybe so. But yes, I have traveled in a few places like United States, Greece, and the countries around us. But just to be clear that I haven't actually lived like substantial time, like years outside Finland. But here I am.
And if I understood well, you have some family connections abroad.
Yes, like how Simo put it, I'm genetically German. My grandmother would have said so also. And Trump told that he has German blood. But yes, my family was German speaking in time of Russian Empire in Latvia. My father spoke German as his first language, but I don't think he can any longer speak German all that good.
But so how did it happen that your father was raised in Finland but spoke German at home?
At that time happened a thing called Russian Revolution. So the members of our family had to flee to Finland, but they were German speaking at the time. My father grew up in his family where they spoke German. But if you live in Finland all your life, if your family speaks one language, then it might not stuck.
It's such a weird thing to me to be able to forget your native language.
Yeah, but I think many heritage speakers of language, like second generation immigrants, are not actually that good at their native tongue.
Okay, but then we have Lauri. Can you still summarize a bit where you lived and why you moved there, if it's possible?
Really briefly, so I moved to Japan first to study. I did that for a year and then met my girlfriend-to-be at that time, and then came back to Finland for a couple of years, and then in 2009 left Finland for the last time at that point for what turned out to be 11 years. And during that time I lived in Hong Kong and France intermittently, and came back to Finland in 2019, which is perfect timing. It was just before the pandemic, so here I am in beautiful Turku.
And if you want to learn more about Lauri's story, you are more than welcome to listen to the bonus episode that will be uploaded, I think, in 2 weeks. But a bit more about you guys. I asked you to select one thing that you would bring from Finland to represent Finnish identity abroad. So if you were going anywhere and you had to bring one object or one thing with you, what would it be? Maybe, Pyry, you have an idea.
Well, my first instinct was to say muumimuki, like a moving cup. And I still think that's a great option. It's like highly practical. It has good chance to be that people know what it is. What are moomies?
In France, not so much.
But in many places,
Germany, maybe.
In Russia, Japan, I think moomins are quite well known.
Yeah,
but when I
in
was in
Japan, they're
United
huge,
States, they had no idea what moomins are. I'm very sorry for them. Yes, but yeah, I think it would be a great option.
Okay, what does it represent, the Moomin Cup?
I
For
think-
people who don't know what Moomins are and what this Moomin Cup is, which
So-
is a religion in Finland.
Moomins are characters made by author Tove Jansson. Tove Jansson is Swedish-speaking Finnish author, or she was. I think they represent all the best things that in the fantastical version of Finnish archipelago life could be.
Okay.
Like, I know living in Finland or anywhere is not like living in this fantasy land, but I think it represents many things that people might like life to be.
Like the ideal Finland.
I hope so.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but I think it's a really good summary of maybe what Tove Jansson wanted to project with her stories.
And the Moomins are really popular in Finland. There are tons of objects that come from these books for children and then animation cartoon for kids and adults. Actually, a lot of adults like it. And Arabia, this brand, created so many objects related to Moomins. Now you can have everything in your house with Moomins on them. For example, it can start with your bed cover to the bowl you are eating it and the Moomin cup. It's the typical gift in Finland, or when you travel to Finland and you bring something back home, because they are a bit heavier than usual cups. The quality is good and the drawings on it are super cute.
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought I would say something like that about a mug, but the quality of
I think it's
the material, I mean,
yeah.
it's good mug. Fun fact, it's the Moomin mugs are so much of a religion, as you said, that there actually are traffics about it.
Yeah.
And the whole like dark market of Moomin mugs. And the thing is like not so long ago in Hansa, for people who don't know, Hansa is a big mall in the center of Turku. There was a shelf. Do you say vitrine?
There still is.
like a vitrine.
There still is, because the
There
other
is.
We also say vitrine in
Yeah,
Finnish.
vitrine.
a few days ago it was not there anymore. But yeah, they were presenting all the Moomin mugs that have been created, and with the stickers about how much they are worth now. And
It's
there is
crazy. It's
one.
piece of collection.
Speculative.
There is
It's
one
speculative, yeah.
Moomin mug that is 3,000 euros.
Oh
So
my
if you have it in your home now, you have 3,000 euros in your hand.
Get it insured.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's from the company Muumimukit Rahaksi, to make money out of your muumimukit
Yeah.
mugs. But there have been hundreds of different kinds of muumimukis.
Every
And
year.
Yes. And yes, it's true, some of those that have been made in 90s or late 80s, they can fetch some thousands of euros today.
It's crazy.
That, like, yeah, for us as foreigner, as French, for me, it was like craziest thing ever. Like,
Yeah,
why?
It's like people collection in stamps.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah,
same
it's-
passion. And the average price of a Moomin cup is between, I would say, 19 to 25 euros, depending on how recent it is or how good the quality, the drawing is.
Some special edition can be 40 euros sometimes, I guess.
Yes, they can be, but it hurts to my soul to say this, but the new ones are no longer made in Finland.
Oh no, I didn't know.
How dare
They are
Made
no
in
longer
Thailand,
made
I think.
here.
Where are they made?
Thailand,
I think Thailand.
Yeah.
Thailand is the
That's
place.
super sad because it
that
was
is.
such a cool Finnish product. This is sad to know.
I don't know why, because they really don't have to be cheap.
Yeah,
people
they
pay a
already
lot.
rich.
Yeah.
Arabia, no. Okay, then Lauri, what would you bring abroad?
Well, I'd like to do something more like comical and bring like a pack of sisu. Like this weird tasting candy that we have, because it would be like, what does the name mean? And then you could explain this weird concept of sisu that we have in Finland, like this persistence and this unrelenting determination to do the task no matter what it is.
Would you say that the concept of sisu is close to like resilience or something like that?
Yeah.
A mix of courage and resilience.
Yeah, and mixed in with obvious stupidity, because we'll go through go through.
I saw a video once on internet, a very very old video. Maybe it was made in the 50s. It was in black and white, illustrating the Finnish sisu, and it was representing a Finnish man trying to build his house in a swamp. And he was just trying to dig in a ground that is impossible to dig, and just yelling, "Oh, perkele saatana!" and just digging.
Really, it's a really good representation of the actual, not so romantic version of sisu. Yeah, that's basically it. Sisu is like going uphill in winter, bare feet, and just swearing a lot, and it's something to that extent.
To prove that you're a man.
And yeah, like in true essence of sisu, actually the University of Oulu was built on a swamp, which is a stupid idea, and I still think it was a stupid idea to build, because it's 8 kilometers from the city, which is not the best concept to have.
That's yes, true, but I like sisu and this swamp and reclaiming swampland. I think it's integral to Finnish foundation myth, because Suomi, the Finnish word for Finland, means swamp, and if you look at the map of Finland, most of this place has been built on swamp. This building is built on swamp. The whole city of Turku has been built on swamp. And most any place in Finland, any place has been swamp at some point. And even today, most of the places that are not farmland are swamps in Finland.
Yeah, that's why it's the Venice of the North.
Yeah. So actually, the whole country it represents sisu, because it's all been built.
All the Finnish, everything has been built with many swear words.
And would you say that sisu is a concept mostly for men, or is it for Finnish people in general?
I think it's not gender specific at all. No, it's just
I agree.
Yeah.
Because I heard it a lot about the army, that people were taught that sisu, it's really a value that you have to work on and to grow inside.
Like something super manly?
I was wondering but apparently not.
No. Maybe if Finnish language had grammatical gender, sisu could be masculine, but as it is, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
thankfully, Finnish doesn't have genders. That's such a relief, because it's already hard to learn already. So
that's the thing about, like, for me, the most difficult thing. I still know. I just speak French. I don't really care about it. I mess the genders up all the time. I just try to say it really fast so that people wouldn't catch me. Because it's like, why is a bottle a female and why is a car? It's funny. It's like seem to be no logic to it, even though my French friends would try to argue that there is some logic.
No, there's no logic to it. Really.
For some object, yes, but otherwise for a bottle, do you need
the logic is much more the origin are much more phonetical and phonological rather than really semantical, like with genders and female and male and such. No, it's just.
And I had a question about sisu again, because it's often something that Finnish people present to foreigners when they arrived in Finland. But when are you confronted to this concept as a child?
Oh wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it's so inherent in our culture that probably from a very young age it would be.
But can you have your parents say, show a bit of sisu?
Yeah, like encouraging your child.
Yeah, when does it come into your life?
When does any word come into my life?
I don't know. For example, I know that determination, you start to hear it a bit when you try to challenge yourself as a child. Okay, son or daughter, you need to show a bit more determination to, I don't know, achieve, and you need to learn how to walk or these kind of things. And I was wondering if sisu was connected to a specific age. For example, in France, we say that 7 is l'âge de raison, like the age when you can reason. And so we talk to you more like an adult starting from that age, I think.
Yeah. I don't... If sisu was a word that you could use as a word of encouragement, sort of, like you can't shout it at somebody. You can say somebody sisukas, like, oh, that's a very like a sisukas performance. So
okay.
that took guts to do. But as it's not a sort of thing that you could sort of use to encourage somebody, it's more to describe a feeling or a set of circumstances that you go through with sisu. So yeah, I don't know, but I mean the word sisu itself has been like even in my childhood, just because it's a brand of candy too. So you kind of see it everywhere. It's a very old brand too. So from like, I don't know, 100 something years ago. So you probably as a kid you pick up this box and you ask like, what does it mean? And then your parents would explain it to you, but it's not like such a pervasive word.
Most people actually, they will not read sisu, they would read gifu.
Gifu, yeah, because it's so old. They used the
old writing. I don't remember the name, but it has a name. This kind of writing. No.
In Finnish, it would be fraktura.
Oh, okay.
The name of the font.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. But I believe I have had a lecture about sisu in kindergarten.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
I believe so.
That's what I was wondering.
So yes, there has been. It wasn't a new word at the time, but the concept of sisu is something that Finnish people would try to use to describe themselves. So it was explicit when we were in kindergarten.
Super interesting.
And about this object you would bring to represent Finland, about the concept of sisu, but there's also the fact that this object, like in its components and taste, it's also really represent Finland a lot, because Finnish people are crazy about lakritsi and salmiakki.
Yeah. And it's such a... Because I know a lot of people who don't like it. I personally don't really like it that much. But since I brought it up, it's been crazy because I have two friends in... Well, our dear Lyon, who are, like recently when I was going back there after the pandemic, and both of them, and they don't know each other, they were like, oh, Lauri, when you come back, can you bring me some salmiakki? And I was like, are you crazy? You know what it tastes like, right? And they were like, both of them were like, we are addicted. The other one hasn't even visited Finland, and somebody brought it to them, and they were immediately hooked on it.
I love salmiakki.
To explain to the auditors who have never tried salmiakki, it's a sort of licorice, but with salt, from what I
It's
understood.
ammonium chloride.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When you say
Professor.
it like that, it doesn't sound edible at all. But trust me, it is.
And it's a sort of candy. There are different brands, but you can also have them mixed with fruit taste or these kind of things. You can also have ice creams with
Oh yes.
Oh, yeah,
salmiakki.
lakritsi ice cream, yeah.
I love ammonium chloride. But I think salmiakki is great for Finnish culinary culture, because we lack the kind of foods that we can feed to foreigners and be like, we eat this all the time, and have them squirm. But salmiakki kind of works that way.
Yeah.
You know,
it's really awkward.
So they
the
will
first time you have it.
remember.
I don't know if you listen to this episode, but we had an episode about food and with people from different cultures, from China and from Belarus, and I was actually surprised that they really like quite simple things about Finnish food. I mean, Yiran, her favorite Finnish food is just ruisleipä.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's actually really interesting, really cool. And I was expecting them to say dish, and she said ruisleipä, and Dima mentioned laskiaispulla, and I was like, yeah, sometimes you just need simple things that are just good. And
in a lot of countries, the simplest dish that they would eat on an everyday basis and think, oh, it's not so interesting, it's the one that surprises the most foreigners.
Yeah.
The second question, and it is, what apprehensions did you have before leaving your country for the first time? Were they confirmed or not? I think this question is better for Lauri if you didn't leave abroad, but then we can adapt it more to your situation. So Lauri, since you lived in so many different countries, maybe the first time you left Finland, you had more apprehensions than the second and the third.
Yeah, like the first time I left was like to do Interrail in 2004. So that was sort of a very easy to that. So you don't need to really have apprehension. You're just trying to control a lot of variables. You don't know really the countries you're visiting beyond what you read on internet or movies you've seen or whatever. So that's sort of already because I exposed myself like within 1 month to so many countries and places and languages. So that by the 2 years later, when I was about to leave to Japan, I already had like some idea of being like out of my comfort zone. So I tried to, when I was going to Japan, well, the process itself was already so weird that you were questioning a lot of things, because when I went to apply for the exchange and I got like accepted, I had to deliver a lot of like medical records. I had to take like lung X-ray and send it to Japan. Yeah,
Lung.
I don't know. Is it like maybe they had like a tuberculosis scare or something like that?
Oh my!
So and that was like, oh wow, this is like serious stuff, right? I have to send like my lung X-ray. Like, such a bizarre. So when I was going to Japan, I was thinking, well, like let's see what else is involved in like arriving to Sapporo, what it's like, and it was very like there was a lot of things that glad that I didn't know beforehand, like so much bureaucracy and all this stuff. And it was like Japanese bureaucracy. So if you think about French bureaucracy, it's like
nightmare.
No, yeah, and it's like you take 100 years back from that, and that's Japanese bureaucracy. A lot of very fancy stamps, tiny notes, a lot of handwriting, and the bigger stamps, the more serious the thing gets. And you're all the time feeling like, oh, I gotta be really careful not to do anything wrong, because everything is very formal in Japan. And like the first night I arrive, I meet my. They always assign you a professor you're supposed to do some kind of thesis or whatever, which wasn't mentioned before I went to Japan. It was like, oh, here's Professor Tanaka. I forgot his name. And he was this guy who didn't speak almost any English. He was just like, we go for dinner. I was like, oh, okay. I literally just unpacked my stuff in this really kind of moldy, old-looking dorm, like the first culture shock, because I thought Japan was going to be clean and nice. And we had like a dorm that, yeah, it was like moldy. There was cockroaches all over the kitchen. And then I was like, I go, and it's nighttime, and I'm kind of tired, and I had to meet this professor who was like, barely speaking. He's like, oh, we go eat soba noodles. I'm like, okay, let's do that.
Why do you
Are they all
lower the
whispering?
voice?
Yeah, he was talking like this. He's talking like a man of mystery, and he's smoking. We'll go to and then it was like the whole dinner was super quiet because he didn't speak much English, and I didn't. I mean, I could spoke Japanese, but I don't know what we're gonna talk. He's like this old professor, and we're just quietly eating soba noodles.
Okay.
So I'm always going on sidetracks, but yeah, I didn't really have. I had apprehensions in terms of like Japan was. I knew it's gonna be really exotic. I just didn't know at all what to expect, because I knew a lot about the culture, of course, from the outside perspective. But I knew there's gonna be a lot of stuff that I'm just not prepared for. Like one of the things was in the first week we arrived, and we had to buy Ethernet cables to access internet. I was like, wow, like coming from Finland, which was already in that time, 2006, was fairly high tech. So to go to a country that you think is very high tech and be like, oh, no, you need to buy this cable in order to access the internet. And then like, yeah, so there was a lot of like, yeah, not like many negative apprehensions, but sort of like just the unknown and knowing it's going to be vast.
Yeah.
So that
you were expecting to have a huge cultural shock.
Yeah. So I was sort of preparing myself like everything's going to be really weird.
Yeah. And then it was confirmed a bit.
Yeah, a lot of weird stuff, but in a good way. It was very positive from the beginning. We got a lot of good contacts. There were students working with us and taking us to places, showing us. If I would go to a ramen shop back then, I wouldn't know what to do, because there's everything in Japanese, and you just have to shout at the chef like, hey, tonkotsu onegaishimasu, and then he's like, hey. And then it's like showing you where to sit, and you sit down, and in 5 seconds you have this big steamy bowl of ramen. So if we didn't have the student friends to show us how things work, I would never probably even go into the shop. Like, I mean, it would be a huge thing, like just to enter the shop and this kind of stuff. So yeah.
I will add one more question, as we are French natives. Did you have apprehensions before going to France?
Oh yeah, well, the bureaucracy.
You knew.
I knew it's gonna be tough. And it was even tougher than, but it was easier for me because I was European, so we only had to do like my fiance's paperwork. But yeah, and everything in French in the préfecture and all this stuff, and it's like wow, the things you need to. Yeah.
Yeah, one complicated thing for foreigners that are coming to France is that when you want to have a flat in France, you need someone who is called like the garant person, which
Warranty.
Yeah, somebody to vouch for you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and says I can cover the expenses if this person doesn't pay the rent. And the problem is that often in Finland you don't have this, and so the parents are not used to write a paper to say I will cover the rent of my child, and then you cannot access the flat, but if you don't have a flat you cannot open a bank account, so you're stuck. It was you who told me.
Yeah, we had that thing like where we arrived to Lyon and we found this place and they were like, well, you need a Leonese bank account. It was like, yeah, but the bank said we can't get an account if you don't have an address, so can you just please help us to do something? And then they were nice enough, they were like, we call the bank from that housing estate's office and say like, we're right here and they're saying this, can we just work out something? And they were like, okay, you just come here today within this next 2 hours so we know, and then we can open you the bank account and you go back, and it was all sorted out. And that's one of the things that even though the bureaucracy in France is very conflicting and messy, but I really appreciate that all the French people are like always helping. Like all the people who work in those bureaus, they know.
Because we hate the bureaucracy too.
Yeah. So everybody's really understanding and they'll try to help you. It's not like I would imagine, because in Finland it would be much stricter. They'll be like, no, you don't have that paper, that's it.
Yeah, it's true that in France but it's also the annoying part that you have to not respect the rule to make things works, and that's why nothing is working in France, because no one is respecting the rule.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Santa Suomi. It's the one word you learn when you come here.
And it's quite interesting because you didn't go to the same countries. So I was wondering for the US. I know nothing about the US, but I would be curious.
So I made a trip of a few weeks to United States. I think pretty similar than your Interrail. It was similar in length, but I used a car because if you go to United States, I think you have to have a car to use. Like,
did you rent it there?
I rented there,
Okay.
yes. I was at the time under 25, which meant that I had to pay like $1,000 extra for the rent.
Why?
It was a young driver fee, I think, maybe for insurance
I was not
purposes.
Yeah, it's like for the insurance premium.
I think it was insurance premium or something like that.
Yeah.
But I loved it. But you were asking about apprehensions. Then I think because the state I went to was Texas, and Texas has a lot of bad reputation for
pew.
Yes, guns, conservative politics, anti-abortion, and all that kind of stuff. And yes, it's true. Like I saw a kindergarten that had a sign that you can't carry a weapon inside. And like the only place that I could not take a rifle with me, I didn't have a rifle. But in case I had, I could not have carried a weapon because I'm not a citizen of the United States. But if you are, the only place in Texas you can't take your weapon with you is a bar. You can't drink and have a gun.
It's like saloon.
Of course, that's not entirely true because I was drinking whiskey with a dude in Enchanted Rock State Park in Central Texas, and after some drinking, we talked about guns, and then he showed his weapon to me.
The cliche, really.
Yes,
after some drinking.
Oh my god.
Did he propose you to try it? To shoot on tin cans?
I think if it had not been in State Park, we would probably have done it, because sometimes I heard a gunfire in the desert and no one paid any attention.
For real?
Once cop stopped me and for traffic stop, I was speeding, and during the stop, I heard gunfire, and the cops did not even look in that direction because, like, why would they?
Wow.
So, yeah, those things were true. They were, but I think Texas was a very nice place. It has a lot of very liberal areas.
Looks beautiful.
It's very beautiful place, and it has great nightlife. If you are outside of the bigger cities, the bigger cities of Texas were really let down. But yes, I had some apprehensions, and there was this bureaucracy in getting to United States. Even if we had a visa waiver that you don't need actual United States visa. But I had to sign that I have never done any terrorist attacks. I'm not going to do any terrorist attacks while in the United States, and I'm not currently having Ebola.
That's the silliest thing ever to ask you before going, oh, by the way, are you planning to kill the president? And you, of course, if you were, yes, you would say it on the paper. Oh, damn, they got me. I'm going to have to write it on the paper.
So strange, this rule. I don't understand why they have
It has a legal reason for it, because if I go to United States, if I ever get a green card, a permanent residency or citizenship, the only way they can ever take my citizenship is if I have gotten it fraudulent, by fraud, yes. And by fraud, I mean that if I end up committing a terrorist attack in the United States, but I have signed a paper that I'm not planning to do so, then that was a lie. I can lose my citizenship of United States.
Ah, okay.
So that's why.
Yes, so there is a reason.
Yeah, apart from all the gun things in the bar, what was the biggest cultural shock for a Finn when going to Texas?
How interested people were to talk with me.
Okay.
Like,
Where is Finland?
in Finland, Finnish people have this reputation of being very shy to talk to strangers or very inward-looking people, and I don't think that's true, but
Not the traveling Finnish people. I think you are the living proofs that you are talkative enough to go on a podcast.
yeah. But compared to United States, it was like a night and day, because every place the random people who don't look like crazy people are coming to talk with me. People are very interested in talking with strangers.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's very nice. And honestly, there was times when I thought maybe I should just stay here.
Really?
Like, yes, okay, Texas has had a lot of problems, and even more for if I plan to live there, but I'm not a very introverted person at all, and so I think I might be happier if people behaved like that.
This is kind of like what we were talking about last time, about that social aspect that we just don't have in Finland. Just our urban, I think, well, that's my theory. I think there's probably more educated people on the subject, but like my theory is just that we haven't lived so close to each other in a city that we haven't yet developed that sense of like, oh, I can just say it's part of being polite is not looking at somebody and then turning away, but saying like acknowledging their, like saying hi, and then you might end up in a conversation, which is totally superficial for the most of the time, but it's to kind of like say we're both here and we're both in this situation, and it's polite too.
Of course, it depends highly on where in United States you go, of course, and there's stereotype that in southern states people are friendlier, and maybe it is so, but I don't think it was any more superficial than like what we are talking here today, or like if I have ever talked to other people.
One remark I would have about Texas is it might be possible for you to picture yourself there also, maybe because you're not a woman. Because I was wondering, maybe as a foreigner, if I was someone, for example, if I were a black woman, maybe I would not feel so comfortable in living. I think it really depends also from your origin. If you're coming to Finland, maybe you're more accepted than someone coming from Asia. I don't know. I was wondering about this. I would really like to visit Texas one day, and I was wondering, will I have a different experience as a woman, or do they not care?
Okay, I have, of course, first of all, I can't know.
Me neither.
I never tried visiting Texas as a woman.
You should.
It's true that racial tensions are very visible in Texas. At least to me, I felt that
You
they
could feel
were.
them.
Like once in a smaller place in western Texas, my host who housed me warned me from walking around in the desert because someone could think that I'm Mexican and shoot.
Oh my god!
I hope it was a joke, but I'm not quite sure about that actually.
Half a joke.
Yeah.
And I visited the state capitol in Austin, and there are large monuments of the Civil War time, in which Texas, of course, was in part of Confederacy, which fought for right to keep slaves
Yeah.
at the time. And while I was looking at those monuments, there were people, a person, a black woman, who talked with his friends about how much he hates those monuments. So yes, these racial tensions are very on the surface there. But then again, I think we need to make a comparison here because it's not that different in Finland. Okay, we don't have a history of slavery here. We never had a civil war about slavery, and we don't have this problem of people shooting each other or cops shooting black people because they don't shoot that many people at all. But we definitely have a problem of racism here in Finland also. And I don't think Texas is more racist than Finland is.
So it's more a problem to visit this place as a foreigner if you're not white, rather than.
Maybe if you're a tourist, they don't care so much because you are not staying. I don't know. I
Yeah.
would be curious.
Yeah.
But-
You would say, because Noemi was asking like if she wanted to visit Texas, so you would say it's more a problem if you're non-white rather than if you're a woman.
Okay,
Yeah, I probably.
To get back to Noimi's question, I can't know, but I don't think you would have any issue. Many lone women are traveling around Texas. If we compare just statistics, Texas is not any more dangerous than like Poland or Hungary is.
Marseille is.
It is so strange to me that we always consider the USA as part of the same world as Finland or France, like the Western rich country, Western country, white people, Western blah blah blah. And still, when you talk about it, it sounds just as alien to me as when Lauri talks about Japan.
Yeah, really.
Well, because it is. Yes, the difference between Japan is that we speak English and we have seen many American movies, and we don't usually speak Japanese.
Yeah, I had a question for Lauri because you lived for a while in 3 different countries, and which one was the most difficult to integrate? Because after a few years, you met some people, some natives, especially in Hong Kong, where you had a girlfriend, native,
Yeah.
a native girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Japan is, and probably still is, would be the most difficult place to integrate because we would go to student parties and they always, Japanese students, they would come to you and ask 3 questions, say, what's your name, where do you come from, and when are you leaving?
I got told this by a woman who. So my friend was studying Japan, and the teacher she lived for 10 years in Japan, and apparently every time Japanese people were asking her, "When do you leave?"
Yeah, they want to know when are you leaving their beautiful
So
country.
strange.
And it's they have a thing. It's called like uchi and soto. It's like you're always gonna be outsider, even if you were born in Japan and you're white. You're gonna be an outsider to them. You might be. I met a guy when I was interrailing through Japan during my spring break. I met a guy in Kyoto where he started off speaking Japanese because he looked Japanese, he spoke native Japanese, and then it turned out he was like saying like, "Oh no, actually I was raised in Seattle." So it was like, "Oh," so we switched to English and we started talking. I was like, and I was right away asking like, "So what's your identity like? How do you feel like? Do you have any conflict with that?" And he said, "Yeah, like basically his whole life has been a conflict because when he was raised in Seattle, he was always Japanese." And then when he moved to Japan, for Japanese people, he's American. He looks Japanese, but he is American.
Yeah, I guess he has a different attitude.
Yeah. So like, and in Hong Kong, they speak of like Asians who are Western, they call them bananas because they call them like yellow on the outside. When you peel it, it's white on the inside. I mean, going back to racism in Asia, racism is widely
Yeah.
accepted. It's not even made a thing. Everybody's like openly
They have a
racist.
similar-
Yeah, like
things.
in France.
They have a
like-
similar they have a similar concept in Western Africa. They call bunti
Yes,
the
yes.
black people who were raised by
White.
white people,
Okay.
and so yeah, because they're black in
I
the
think that's-
outside but white. in
That's
the-
in many places.
Yeah,
Like in African Americans can speak each others as coconuts because they're brown outside and white inside.
Ah.
Crazy
Also,
this
universal.
metaphor that
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
yeah, funny.
So I think that just speaks to our universal, like, sort of. We want to make stereotypes of things before we really understand them. We always like try to figure out things. Oh, he's like a banana. So, oh, what do you mean? Oh, he's ABC, like American-born Chinese. So, oh, I know now what he is sort of before you get to know him or her. So that's what we do everywhere. I guess it's universal
Yeah.
that we call somebody a coconut, then you have some kind of context to put them in, and hopefully people who want to learn, people get to know people more, to know
Oh
that
my.
we're never that thing that you thought we were. Yeah.
It's so
But-
funny for me to have the word coconut again because we used it in an
yeah,
episode.
it's
'cause-
quite of a recurring
Yeah, this
thing.
person from the Philippines was saying, I feel like a peach and Finnish people are coconuts that we need to crack to understand.
Yes.
So it feels like fruits are super popular to describe
Yes.
relationships with other people.
Yeah.
I had one last questions for you guys, and it is, what did the contact with an international environment taught you about your own self, especially as Finns? Help us understand better the Finnish mentality and how it helped you be confident enough to come talk in a podcast.
Yeah, I would add to that since I've been living in Turku, I really realized that there are two kind of Finnish people.
We
Yeah.
can do generalities again.
I'm
How do we call
I'm
them?
totally going to generalize, and I'm apologizing for that. But I
Open
really
coconuts and
please
closed
use like
coconuts.
riisipiirakka and ruisleipä.
Oh yes, yes, it will be so good.
so two kind of Finnish people. The riisipirakka. What was the other one?
Ruisleipä.
Ruisleipä. Okay. Ruisleipä people are just like same thing on both sides. No, I mean the two kind of people were like the Finns who always stay among Finns. I often see people in the streets of Turku, and they're with their friends, and I can feel that I'm never going to be, even if I try, friends with them because they're all Finns who want to stay with Finns. And then the other kind of people that I've met, like both of you, are Finns who not only mix with strangers, but Finns who like to meet strangers and to exchange with strangers and such. And I feel like I feel more and more over the years. I feel more and more this dichotomy about these two kind of Finnish people. Like you're either only want to stick with Finns or you're super open-minded, and I don't know how much I'm generalizing.
I'm completely disagreeing with the Piraka theory because I think there is, for me, it depends more on have you been abroad, and that's why I wanted to do an episode about this, or have you been to another city even, because I feel that Finns who stayed in the same social circle are shyer to talk with other people, but I don't think it matters so much that these people are foreigners or not. Because
Oh no, I didn't say that this mattered. I just said
they don't stick with Finnish, they stick with people they know, I think. In my opinion, from what I understood, from what I perceive, it's more than they are not used to talk to new people in general, and that it's hard to go out of the comfort zone. But I don't think that the fact that you come from abroad or not matters so much. I think it's really
okay.
I don't know how it was for you, but I feel that all the Finns I know who have been abroad at some point in their life, when they came back, it was easier to talk with new people in general because they had crossed that boundaries and like, okay, I could be another person for a few weeks or a month or years, and now it's easier to bond with people because they have been in that position where you are forced to communicate. I
Yeah, but
think.
I feel like the difference is still very clear. Like these people, they really had the shock of going abroad, and then it really changed them a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or
But-
people
Yeah.
doing theater.
Yeah.
Well, if the question was how contact with international environment changed me,
Good
like
memory. Yeah?
you were talking about how some Finnish people don't want to talk with strangers, they are outsiders, and when I had Vietnamese roommates, I think I had to see that I did have this side also. I did feel that I had greater difficulties getting over my own fear of foreignness with people who did not look like me. It took some time, and I got over it, and she was my favorite roommate I have had, and so it was great. But I realized that I did have some fear of foreignness, like apprehension of talking to a person who does not look like me, who is not from place like where I am. And you were thinking out that there are two kinds of people, but I think that even I had these both things in me. I talk to strangers, but then some person looked too different from me, then I felt more difficulties in conversing with them because of my own apprehensions about foreign people.
Yeah, but with this Vietnamese roommate, what was it you who forced yourself to bond, or I don't know how to phrase that.
Well, I think it was because she was very social and interested in talking to me.
So it comes from
Yes.
it comes from the stranger, and
She insisted to create the relation.
Yeah, she did, and I'm thankful for it. It was great relation.
Do you
cracked-
encourage foreigners to try to have a relationship
she
with
cracked
Finnish?
the coconut.
Well done.
Yeah, I think it's like it sounds. I always feel like I'm like a walking cliche, but I always feel like you were talking about it before. Like the more I've seen the world and met tons of different people in different contexts and speaking all kinds of weird languages, the more I realize that everybody's just the same. Everybody's really the same. It's just it depends on your situation or the place where you grew up. You're kind of like the product of that, and it doesn't mean you're a final product. You can always like develop yourself more, and as long as you're not shutting your mind, and saying like, oh, this is me, I'm Lauri, and I'm not gonna change. Sometimes when you meet those people who have like everything's cast in stone, and like, whoa, you're giving up this early in life.
The sisu.
Yeah, like
I will stay myself until I die.
yeah. So it's like the more I've traveled, the more I've learned like what's really me, like who am I. So we were talking with my colleagues about like giving uncertain business environment, what's going to happen, and I'm like, well, I have several skills already. If I would happen to lose this job, I'm going to be fine because I'm hardworking, and my identity is not tied to something that I studied per se. It's like even though I studied something, it doesn't mean that I want to stop. Now I'm doing business development, which I didn't study, but I find it interesting. So I'm trying to learn new things, and as long as you keep a positive attitude, just in terms of everything, but we're talking about maybe growing as a person and meeting new people, then you're going to be fine. And all those places I've been to, people are, as long as you make the effort of saying even a few words in their language, or saying like, I'm here, like I want to know about this place and teach me what it is to be a Japanese or Cantonese person or a French person, then your mind gets expanded and you meet new people and you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Like, what makes you tick.
Would you encourage foreigners living in Finland and in Turku to try speak Finnish with other people as a way to create easier relationship? If you say that at the beginning you had a lot of apprehension towards your roommate, for example, what did she show you to make you feel more comfortable, or what would you advise foreigners to do to make friends in Finland?
Well, definitely learn the funny expressions. We have tons of really funny like expressions, and that's always like, for me, that's one of the first things to learn any language, is to learn some funny expressions, because then you're like, why do you say that? And then it gets you in a conversation about something, just to understand that. And Finnish is a really funny language. We have a lot of wordplay, and that's a good way to get into it. Like to, you can learn really basic words just to go to the grocery stores and ask the people working there, I'm looking for this, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, fine. So just don't make it too difficult. You don't need to have like a massive vocabulary or make a thesis about Finnish languages. Just learn the basics and make friends and get a hobby. Hobby is the best way. Just get some hobby, because that's how you really get into like non-formal discussions with people. It might be like you have a hobby and you're talking to your friends. Oh, how do you say this thing that we do in this sport in your language? And then like, oh, okay, now I can follow what they're doing over there. Like for me, basketball was always that, and then I learned basketball in Cantonese, for example. And it was so funny because I can participate that much more.
Yeah, in jiu-jitsu I learned how to say strangle and kick.
You got to find people or context or friends who will insist in speaking Finnish to you, like a certain person here.
He's sending the heart sign.
To Pyry, because but Pyry is the only person I know in Finland who insists on speaking Finnish to me, and it actually helps a lot.
And Lauri is also trying. We have good partners.
And that's the thing. I'm not criticizing Finnish people for that, but it's true that when you bond with a Finn and become friends with a Finn, things will instantaneously happens in English, and so it's good to have sometimes people like context or situation or people with whom things have to happen in Finnish.
Yes, true.
In Finland has a problem that people speak too good English. Yes,
Stop being so smart.
Sometimes I think integration might be easier here if we did not speak English. I also recommend insisting on speaking Finnish, because people usually they create their relationship with other people in a language, and that language is difficult to change afterwards. So if you ever start speaking like as in English or any other language with a person, it's afterwards difficult to change.
Yeah, that's true. I know a couple, actually, a French guy who met a Finnish girl maybe 10 years ago or something. They've been together for all this time. They got married. They have kids. He speaks perfect Finnish now, and he's been speaking perfect Finnish for years and years. And still in their couple, they are stuck with speaking English to each other because they feel like
that's their their native language.
Soon as they start talking Finnish, even if both of them, like, she's native Finnish and he speaks native level, but as soon as they start speaking Finnish, they feel like they are not in their couple anymore. They are with a different person. They are, and that's exactly what you say. Yeah, when a relationship with, like, no matter if it's love or friendship or anything, when you start building it with a language, it shapes the relationship and it changes the relationship if you switch to a different language.
Yeah, especially a love relationship.
Yeah,
like.
Actually, there have been studies about this, saying that when you have a conflict or an argument with someone, you actually should try having the argument in a language that is not yours, because that struggle you have with
you have to think
explaining, it forces you to think more, to choose more specific word. And so if you have an argument with someone, do it in a different language. It's the same phenomenon as on the internet or when you're texting with someone and you're using emojis and you're never sure how people are going to understand these emojis or not.
Just talking about emojis, that was so funny. Like a couple of years ago, my ex-colleague, she ruined the, I don't use it that much, but the wink emoji, because she was saying how, like, she always thinks something sexual about it. So whenever she sees that emoji, she's like, "Ugh, what are you trying to say?" What? Once she said it to me, now it's like an ear. I can't get it out of my brain. So whenever I see like a client writing email to me and then there's a wink, I'm like, "What do you mean wink? This was a totally appropriate business email. Why are you winking at me? What's going on?" And then every time I introduce this idea to another person, they'll be like totally ruined by it. So,
but it's true in French. I think it means often like ambiguity.
Like
any expression, emojis or IRL expressions like thumbs ups and such, they all have this problem, like, because they are not explicit. I am hungry. I want rice or something. So, and they are all culturally codified.
Yeah.
And I think especially emojis are difficult because they are very fluid in their meaning and
be so
constantly
excellent.
changing.
But now it's time to conclude, and I would like to ask you, do you have recommendations of activities or things about, since we talked about maybe hobbies to start to meet friends and make Finnish friends, I would advise to do sport.
In Turku also.
In Turku.
Yeah.
But for you guys, what would you advise?
I don't know if you meet a lot of people by doing so, but I was originally meant to come to this podcast to speak about history of Turku. So I will give a recommendation about that. Because we are here talking about cultural connections and such things, then I will recommend the Turku Cathedral. Because like the oldest building here and so on, and if you look around there, you can see many graves. And if you look at the names of those graves, you see that none of them are Finnish names.
Okay.
Like they're all German-speaking people, because this used to be a German-speaking place by the high elite of the city. And then not my idea, but the old bishop of Turku from 17th century, late 17th century, I believe, was Rotovius, and he was also an immigrant from Sweden. Of course, these were the same country at the time, so maybe not immigrant, but he really did not like here. So he wrote back to Sweden that I have been sent to be along snakes and scorpions here. So
Designating
he designated people of Turku to be snakes and scorpions. Later, he also told
Like the
that,
worst TripAdvisor review ever.
yes. Later, he also told that people here are bigs, and he was haastaa oikeuteen. Sued
For
for
instance.
defamation, but then the court ordered the people of Turku need to pay reparations to the bishop for claiming that what he said was not true.
So we were pigs.
They were bigs, yes.
Pigs. Okay.
Recommendation on how to integrate it to Turku, or what was the
If you had some things that
Activities or
yourself...
things to visit or things to do.
Like, well, tons. Check out the restaurant scene. Turku is a really, really great restaurant city, and everything is like within walking distance almost. So yeah, we have our first. Well, I don't really care about these nowadays, but the first Michelin star restaurant, Kaskis, and we have awesome vegetarian restaurants. We have pretty good pizza scene. Turku has also interesting history with a lot of Italians. There's a lot of Italians here. Also, if you're exchange student, you definitely need to check out the sauna culture in Turku. It's awesome. It's a really cool. Like I live in Esponen, which has this really big public sauna, and it's really easy to get to. And it works really well. They have buttons for throwing the water, so you don't need to be worried about some what we call saunatonttu. These grumpy men who go there. And go and throw a lot of water into the sauna stove, so just to empty the whole place out. So that's a nice place where you have.
Of course, when Lauri is mentioning the sauna of Ispoinen, what he really means is the sauna of Huittamo, because we all know that the beach is Huittamo's beach, even if officially it's from Ispoinen.
Yeah, sure. It's weird that it's called Ispoisten Uimaranta because it's in Huittamo. Yeah.
I recommend this sauna also. It's a public sauna. I think it's about $6.50 to go there, and you can spend as many hours as you want as long as it's open. But it's really nice because it's one of the only place Finnish people are so talkative. The sauna is always full of noise, and I love it. It's one moment where they feel so relaxed, I guess, and chatty.
Actually, we were talking earlier about forcing yourself to speak Finnish to integrate. Sauna is a great place. I love going to sauna and speak to retired people, like I said, because the old people in Finland, they are much less shy, I think, than the younger people.
It's true.
They are always super ready to speak with you, and since often they can speak English but not necessarily really well.
I think they don't want.
They will be so happy if you try speaking in Finnish, and that's a good thing to practice your Finnish. Go to sauna and talk to old people.
Yeah, perfect. Then we got somewhere. That's a really concrete
true.
example of how to get into conversations with locals.
Okay, but we will conclude here, guys. Thank you for coming today. And this was the last episode of summer edition of Radio Turku. We will see you soon for our 2 bonus episodes, and then for the new season,
Yes.
the autumn season of Radio Turku. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Moikka.
Moikka.
Bye.
Oh, it's a sunny day.